Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. So we have basically completed most of the tailoring on the front of the jacket. So in today's lesson, we're going to turn our attention to the back, and I'm going to show you how to hand tailor the entire back of the jacket, bringing the yoke and the main part of the jacket with those beautiful pleats all together. You're not going to want to miss this lesson, so stick around because that's what's happening today in the atelier. All right, so here we are. We've got the back of the jacket or the back of the coat. We're going to start making that up. A couple of things real quick just to note, okay? When we laid our cloth, I left a 3-centimeter inlay here, okay? So if you can see this blue line represents a raw edge. And on this particular pattern, that raw edge is net. In other words, we're not gonna have a seam allowance to this. We're gonna sew right along that raw edge on the back of the jacket. Okay, so that's gonna be our center back seam, if you will. All right. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna sew up the center back seam. I'm gonna pick stitch it. And so as you can see, it's a rather long piece. I don't know if I will actually torture you in watching me pick stitch all of that. That would be insane. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put together the beautiful pleat that we designed for the back of this coat. And then we have a yoke that goes above that, all right? So that's what we're going to be doing today, just to get started. All right. So the very first thing I need to do is I need to come in here with a few pins and just match up this plaid beautifully, okay? So I'm just coming back a little off of where I'm going to be sewing, and I'm just making sure that, and I'm not going to do the whole thing. I kind of work in batches here, okay? I'm just going to make sure that this is all matching the way I want. Nothing's worse than having a gorgeous plaid of this sort and then it all comes together and it doesn't match. Or it's off by like a millimeter or something. No, I can't do it. This is one of those things that I just cannot compromise on. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to baste this all the way down. Okay, now what's really important about this baste, okay, because we're going to baste, we're going to top stitch, and then we're going to pick stitch, all right? So what I want to make sure of as I baste is my bastes aren't too big or too far apart, all right? I don't need them to be teeny weeny, but I want them to be close enough. The stitches are maybe like a couple centimeters and maybe a half centimeter in between. All right, so very simply, I'm just following this blue guideline that I gave myself here, okay? And the other thing that we want to be really careful of as we're basting is we don't want these stitches to be tight, okay? Because if they are, you're going to get this nasty little gathering up the center back seam, and you definitely don't want that. So if you're doing a running baste like I am, you just want to, I'll show you every so often, you just want to push the tightness out, okay? Just push it out a little bit. Okay, so here, it's a little bit too big. There we go. All right. And then all we're going to do is just take it from the top and, see, just push it down like that. All right. Okay, so that's easy enough, yeah? Basting and matching. I like just doing, I just like having a running needle, or running pins is what I like to call it, where I just continue to move down and I pin a few, 2 or 3. I use 2 or 3 pins at a time, and then I keep going. So that's not too hard, right? That's not too difficult. Matching. It just takes patience. you know, just a little bit of patience. All right, so what I'm going to do here, because I think you get the gist, is I'm just going to pick this up in my hand because it allows me to work just a little bit faster so that all this boring basting isn't, you know, helping you fall asleep, right? So, you know, could you sew this? You absolutely could. If you wanted to get on the machine and not hand stitch, you know, this whole thing, all right? What I would suggest, if you're not into doing all that, then give yourself a guideline like I have, a blue line like I have, or whatever, you know, a chalk line. And then match your plaid or your stripe and just baste slightly off of that, okay? And then get on the machine and, you know, get it done. That way you're sure that your plaid will match all the way down. Because the machine has this nasty little habit of, you know, the little feet that push the cloth forward. It pushes apart your cloth. And that's why, you know, that's where I, you know, have gotten to a point where I can't even fathom. I mean, I do use a machine for a few things that makes sense, right? I mean, once we're done with this, I'll be putting together the lining and putting the lining in the back. I'm not going to, it doesn't even make sense to hand stitch lining together. That's silly. So I will definitely be using the machine, okay, when I, you know, to put together the lining. Because I have to do, whatever I'm doing to this piece right here, I have to do the lining, all right? It's the same piece. And we're not doing anything particularly different when it comes to the lining. Sometimes, like in a jacket like this, for example, you might put a pleat in the back to allow for some movement, okay? But because we already have a pleat built into the jacket and the jacket is very flowing and it's not real tight, we don't need to put any additional ease in that particular instance. We're going to have some ease, of course, in the back, just like we would with anything else that we make lining wise. We have to put that ease in to avoid things getting tight. All right, that's really important, or your jacket just won't lay nice and all that tightness will show through on the front of the coat or the jacket. And that's a no bueno situation in my opinion. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep basting this, and I won't torture you with having to watch me here, unless you want to. I'll just keep going. And then the next thing we're going to do is top stitch this, all right? So I've just gotten down here to the bottom and finished this off. And before I tack this, I want to one last time, okay, just grab this and get all the tightness out of these stitches, okay? This is really important. You can see all that tightness? Look at that. See that? That's a no bueno situation, okay? So we want to get all that out before we tack this off. Just make sure it's not tight at all, okay? So we can tack that. That looks nice. And now we can have a moment of truce and see if our pattern matches. And have an ooh, ah moment. Yes? That looks very nice. Yeah, that looks good. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch this, you see? And then once we top stitch it, we're going to we're going to form our pleat here and here, like that. You see, that's going to come in like that and hide our seam, if you will, okay? Which is all going to be hand stitched. And we'll have this beautiful pleat that comes all the way down to the bottom, which will look lovely, okay? So here, now what I'm going to do, now that I have that, you know, my first baste in, now I'm going to put in what I call the top stitch, okay? we're going to top stitch. This is very similar to what we did with our darts in the front, right? We basted it, we top stitched it, and then we pick stitched it. We're going to be doing the same thing here. All right. Now, what I've done is I have folded my excess, or the inlay here. I folded it all back. I didn't open it. Okay, I'm not opening this up. I'm folding the inlay towards me. Okay. And so I've got this edge here, all right, that's facing away from me. And I want it just like that, okay? Just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste this. Again, I'm going to top stitch it. And as I'm doing that, I'm coming back off. I'm opening up this, opening up the seam, if you will, all right? And I'm coming off the edge just a couple millimeters, because when I pick stitch this, okay, bring this forward so you can see. So when I pick stitch this, I got to give myself enough room, because I want my pick stitches to literally run right along the edge of my seam here, okay? So I want to open this up enough that I can see my first basting stitches underneath. I don't want to pull it too much, just want, like I said, want to make sure that it's completely open. Okay, it's not overlapping, or, you know what I'm saying? And then here I can do a nice running baste. And again, I'm keeping my stitches relatively small and close together. And just like I did with my first baste, okay, I'm going to make sure that these are not tight. All right, so we're just going to open that up and continue to baste. Now, again, once I get enough of this behind me, I usually like to pick my garment up and baste in my hand, okay? But I just want to show you, because if I pick this up now like this, you're really not going to see, I guess maybe you could see a little bit there. You're not going to really be able to see a whole lot of what I'm doing, but I like to hold it in my hand. And what I like to do is I like to get my index finger underneath here, yeah? And then I like to have my thumb on top. And what I do is I add, I just have a little bit of tension here on my cloth. So my non-working hand is working to open up the seam, and my working hand is coming in and basting, okay? And then the other thing my non-working hand is doing underneath, okay, is making sure that my pattern, or my plaid here, continues to be nicely aligned, okay? So that's why I like to work with things in my hand. And I could probably twist this around a little bit so you can see in the front camera here what I'm up to, okay? Like so. And this way, I'm sure that I'm following the line that I've established for this back center seam true, you see, because I can keep opening this up and then just basting, doing like a nice running baste. And of course, we want to work really hard to get that tightness out as well. Just keep pushing that tightness out as you go. All right. So I'm going to keep working on this. Again, I'm just going to work my way all the way down to the bottom, okay? And so I'll work here a little bit, and you can watch me if you want. We can chit-chat a little bit. This is, this is not difficult if you've done a lot of handwork, just basting, top stitching, and pick stitching is not a difficult process. It's a little time consuming, obviously, a lot more time consuming than sitting down at a machine and machining it. But I don't know, I think I've said this before, like I have a really hard time using the sewing machine now. I mean, I use it for things that you know, makes sense, right? If we have to sew pocket facings and pocket bags, it makes sense to do them on the machine. Some of them, you know, when we did our beautiful welt pockets, with the exception of the pocket bags, everything was done by hand, yeah? And that just made sense. So I'm cool with that. But stuff like this, when you can take a few extra minutes to do something by hand, you have more control over the garment. You know, there's a huge difference between a seam that's been pick stitched and one that's been machined. Huge difference, huge. You know, it just feels, I don't know, more stable, if you will. And it looks beautiful because, you know, you've got this top stitch. So you don't have a seam that's open. You have actually a seam that's been pushed over to one side and then top stitched down. Yeah? And I don't know, it just looks, I mean, I don't know if you can see, I'm sure you can see the seams on here. You know, this beautiful princess line on this coat or jacket, you wouldn't even see it really. It wouldn't really stand out if it was just sewn by machine. I mean, it would, but not as beautifully as it does there. So I don't know. I'm just really biased about it at this point. If it takes extra time for me to pick stitch this whole thing, so be it. You know, so be it. Even trousers, okay? I know, trousers, it's totally 150% acceptable in the bespoke world to machine your trouser inseam and side seam. 100%, 100% acceptable, okay? But I just can't, I don't know. There's times that I just want to make trousers 100% by hand, and so I do. And, you know, when you see that beautiful seam running down the side seam, it just looks so beautiful in my opinion. So just looks really sharp. Stands out, if you will. I got a little knot here. There we go. All right. It just stands out. It just looks nice. Well, you'll see when this is done. I'll give you a real good close-up of it, and you'll see the difference. Again, you got to have the patience to do it, but I don't know. I can't go back. One important little hint as we get down to the length here, okay? This pattern, the way I patterned this, the back is not straight, right? It kind of comes out. So it's got a little bit more flair to it, yeah? And so right here at the very bottom, a little hint, if you're ever working with a rounded or a flared, like an A-line, I guess would be the best way to say it. Here at the back, what I've done is instead of continuing my angle at the length, I actually squared it down, okay? And that's going to make a big difference when it comes to turning up the actual length. It's gonna make turning that length up so much easier. Okay, so just from this point down, I squared it instead of continuing with the angle. Wasn't a whole lot. This isn't a huge angle. It's a little bit. I think we came out, what did I come out? 10 centimeters? 5 centimeters, I believe. So just a couple inches. Nothing huge. All right? Okay. So here we are at the bottom. And again, before I tack this completely, I'm just going to put my needle like that. One more time, I'm just going to come in and relieve all of the tightness out of this beautiful line here, okay? Just get all the tightness out. See that? Oosh, that would be awful. Look at all that tightness. Just pull it all out. All right? Just what you're really doing is just stretching out the stitches because they got tight as we sewed. Okay, so just pull that. All right, very good. Okay, so now that we have that done, before we can start pick stitching, we have to do a couple of things. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to press this on the back, okay? I want to press this so I get a really nice, sharp, hard seam on the front, okay? Now, because I'm working on the back of the coat, I don't need a press cloth, okay? You can use one if you want, but you don't need to. So we want to press this all the way down. Make sure it's nice and dry. Okay. Press, 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 constantly pressing. But doing, pressing the seam at this point is important because, first of all, it makes it really hard for the pattern to move around a lot, right? If we've done everything, the way we should, in terms of matching our pattern and top stitching well, if you will. And so I think it makes it much easier. And then when you pick stitch, you just know exactly where you are. That pick stitch just comes out so much cleaner, I believe. Okay. So all these little techniques, although they might seem slightly insignificant, they really do make a big difference when it comes to making up a garment, between the pressing and all of that. Top stitching, or just even, like I said, just basting the seam before you go to machine it, if that's what you want to do. All right, so we got that. Bada bing, bada boom, as they say. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, so now that we have this done and pressed out nicely, what we need to do is we need to take out our first basting stitch. And the reason being is because if we don't take it out now, okay, what happens is your pick stitches are going to get caught in them, or they're going to get caught in your pick stitches. And it makes it almost impossible to get them out, okay? And so we're just going to get this first based out, whoops, all at once here, I hope. My thread's a little thinner than what I'm used to working with here. There we go. So that's all out, okay? All right. And if we turn this over now and we look, we've got a nice sharp edge to work with. In fact, I might just give this a press on this side too, now that we've got those basting stitches out. Let me give this a quick press on this side, just to make sure all is well. Super fast, okay? Super fast. All right. Okay. All right. All right, so we're going to pick stitch this beautiful seam here, okay? And what I've done, let's get these Jaja's out of here, driving me crazy, is I've just threaded my needle with some beautiful hand silk, okay? So we're gonna use hand silk as always to pick stitch. Why? Because it's a very, very strong thread. It's like a 2 or 3 ply silk thread, and you just can't get any stronger than that, okay? And it's thick enough that it'll hold, all right? So I'm going to come in here and tack off at the top of my garment, all right? And then, so the actual pick stitch itself is not, you know, you're not going to see it here. That's just know that. I'll attach a link to a video for pick stitching that you'll be able to see it very, very clearly because I magnified my camera like a bajillion times so you could see these little teeny weeny dots, all right? But here's what's important about pick stitching. First of all, when you're pick stitching a seam like this, what you want to do is you want your thread that's come out, okay, to be about I'd say about 2 or 3 millimeters off the edge of the seam, okay? And then what you want to do is bring your needle in next to that stitch, that first stitch that came out, right next to it, all right? And then come up forward just a couple millimeters. That's how close this stitch is. And it's very, very close to the edge, okay? It's like a millimeter or 2 off the edge of your seam, no more than that. And it's like, they're like a millimeter or 2 apart. That's it. So, and that's the technique. That's the important part of the technique, is keeping everything super close, all right? Because you want this seam to last forever, forever. And if you have your stitches really far apart, that's not going to happen. Your seam is going to open up. So a lot of times when I was teaching, my students would show me their pick stitch, and you know, it would be like this. You could see like a stitch, and then it would be like a centimeter apart, and I'd be like, no, 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 no. We don't want to see little dots all over everything, okay? We don't even want to see it. What you want to see when you're all done is an impression, okay? If you get up close and personal with this jacket, all right, you wouldn't really see stitches. What you would see are impressions of the actual pick stitch. Same over here. It's just an impression. And so that's how close and tiny they are, all right? So here, what I do is I work, and I'm working just right on top of the baby, if you will, until I get enough cloth behind me, okay? And also, the other thing I should say is I'm using a relatively small needle. If you look at my basting needle here, is probably, you know, a significantly larger, you know, maybe a centimeter, no, not quite, but almost a centimeter longer than the needle I'm using to do pick stitching. And the reason for that is because I want to be able to work very agilely, if you will. Okay, so my needle being smaller allows me to work faster because it's not as much to maneuver around. And when we're doing small little hand stitches like this, that's really super important that we're using a smaller needle. The other thing that you want to be very careful of when you're pick stitching is you want to make sure that you're not pulling your stitches tight, okay? Because these stitches are so tiny. Like if I had to take this out, if I had to take these stitches out, it would take me like, especially on a coat with this length, I don't know if I could do it without having to be committed into an insane asylum, because I'm not kidding, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but they are so small that having to take these out is a exercise in insanity. And so don't pull these tight, because this is not one of those things that you can do this like I did, okay, with the basting stitches. They're too close together to do that. So when we're sewing, now here it's really easy because I have a lot more control. But here in a moment, I'm going to pick this up. And this is how I would normally sew this, okay? I would hold this in my hand just like before. I'll turn this way, okay? And I would, I would hold this in my hand and pick stitch. In fact, it doesn't even make sense to hold it like that for you because you can't see what the heck I'm doing anyway. All right, so you want to see the technique more than the stitch. Let's stick with that, all right? So here, what I would be doing is I would hold this in my hand, okay? And I would have a lot more control over my needle, getting it in and out of the cloth, okay? And so see, because my needle is smaller, I can work much faster. Now, the other thing that's interesting to note in hand stitching, regardless of whether you're doing a pick stitch or a fell stitch or this stitch or that stitch, the most important thing about hand stitching is your quickness, okay, comes from actually pulling the stitch, all right? The speed, if you will, in which you hand sew comes from this moment right here where you're pulling the stitch through, yeah? And knowing exactly when to stop. And if you notice too, the other part of this is my thread is being, obviously I'm working on the single here, right? But my thread isn't all the way out here, yeah? That doesn't make sense. So what I'm doing is I'm keeping my thread very close, almost on the double. And each time I pull my thread out, okay, each time I complete a stitch, all right, I'm just giving that thread a little bit of a pull, tiny pull, so that this doesn't overlap and get caught in the stitch, all right? And so this is all part of developing your hand work. And it just kind of, it just takes a lot of practice, just a lot of doing it to develop the speed, the agility. And it's really, a lot of hand sewing is just muscle memory. It really is. It's just muscle memory. Okay. So that's my big grand lecture on, on hand sewing. It's just practice, practice, practice. And I've got a video that I did. I just need to spruce it up a little bit. And it has like the 8 hand stitches that are most commonly used in hand tailoring, in bespoke tailoring. So I think for those of you out there that are looking to get, indulge more in hand tailoring, that might be a good video for you. When it comes out, I'll post it on YouTube and you can. And again, I made this video and I shot it, oh my God, at so it's like right here. Yeah. So that you can really see how the stitch is done. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plow away here and I'm going to finish this up. And then when I'm done, I'm going to show you how to put this beautiful pleat in here. We're going to press everything off nice. I'll show you we're going to baste this pleat in, okay? And then we're going to get our other piece, the yoke basted, top stitched, and pick stitched on as well. And then at least we'll have the back all made up at that point, okay? So that's what I'm going to keep working on here. All right, so I'm just down to the last few centimeters here, just about done with this pick stitching. And we are going to press this as we always do, right? Press it out real nice. Take our basting stitches out, top stitches out. And we'll press this beautifully, gorgeously, wonderfully. And then we're going to put the yoke on. And that's going to be that. Not too tough, not too tough. You know, the thing is, with something like this, that's a little bit more fashion-ish and not so traditional tailoring-ish. You have to just be very good about planning your pattern and making sure that your pattern is matching, or we call it walking your pattern, making sure you walk the pattern so that it all, you know, that your arm size, you know, we cut part of our arm size off here, right? Midway into that yoke. And so, you know, we had to make sure that when it came together, it was going to make sense, especially because you don't want to add any length to the back of the arm side by miscalculating your seam allowance. Oh, that would not be good. We'd be very upset when it came to putting the sleeve in. So you got to be real careful of stuff like that. All right. All right. So here I'm done right down to the bottom. I'm just going to tack this off very nicely here. Make sure it doesn't open up on me. Okay. There's that. And then we'll put that aside. We'll need that here. All right. Good stuff. So now we're going to take this basting thread out because we don't need it anymore. I don't know where my seam ripper is today. And I honestly don't have the patience to look for it. So we'll just figure it out. Okay. I just switched over to this basting thread and it's a little thinner than what I'm used to using. So it breaks a little easier when I'm trying to pull it out, long piece like this. Yeah. You will obey me. Should be really simple. But it's not. There we go. Okay. All right. So let's get this pressed out. I'm going to press it on the wrong side first. Okay. So let's do that. Let's make sure I haven't like veered off into la la land somewhere where you can't see me. Moving all over the place here as I work. Try to stay center table. All right. So we do want to give this a really good press. You know, if you want to give this a very light little pull as you press, okay? Because the stitches, as hard as you try, see, I'm just giving it a very light, not pulling it hard. As hard as you try, you know, this thread is very thick and there is a little bit of tightness that happens as hard as you try not to. So it's okay to give this a little bit of a tug, just a small amount as you press. You can see here how there's just a little bit of gathering, and that's just from the hand. You can't help it. But fortunately, we can give it just a little bit of a pull. And this thread is made of silk, so it's the strongest thread available. So it's not going to break. You're not going to stretch your cloth out. Just a nice little, see, just a nice little pull to get everything back in line. That's all you need to do. See that? All is well. Because we don't want to create ease in our center back seam. That'd be very awful. All right, Now we can turn it over and I'll show you how beautiful that looks, yeah? So that looks really nice. Let's just spread it out here so you can see it. And so here there's like a definite kind of a ridge, if you will, that you can feel with your hand. It's not like a regular open seam, okay? And you know, down here, I'm just gonna give this little bit down here a press with the press cloth, just to make sure all is well. But I'm very happy, that looks beautiful. Very happy with that. Just down here a little bit. Just where we pressed it, where there was a little bit of tightness, I just want to press it on the outside. All right. So now that we have all that accomplished, it was quite an ordeal. I kind of worked up a sweat. You see my glasses keep sliding down? I kind of worked up a little bit of a sweat. Doing that damn pick stitch. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Let's get this out of the way. All right. Get that out of the way. Got my pattern over there. Okay. So I'm going to lay this out like so. All right. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but right here and right here are the mark stitches indicating where my pleat is. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over, this mark stitch over, and I'm going to line it right up with my center back seam, just like that, okay? And I want to make sure, it's really important that we're accurate here, okay? So line it up nicely with the center back seam. And what we can do, okay, is we can take a pin and just pin this in here to hold it nice, okay? Just like that, all right? So that's going to look something like that, right? It's going to flow all the way down like that. Beautiful, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing here where we're going to take this one, this little, where our pleat is over here, and we're going to fold it over, and we're going to line it up, and we're going to meet it right up against the other pleat, okay? Nice and even. And, you know, I've got like this really, really thin stripe here that I'm going to use, there we go, to match things up, all right? Just like that. So I want this to be like almost seamless, okay? Flipping glasses. Okay, so we're going to get that there, okay? Just like that. Just like that. This one, just like that, okay? So that's what that's going to look like. Now, what I'm going to do, just to make my life a little easy for when I go to put the yolk on, is I'm just going to press this down a little bit, okay? Just to flatten it out, because we're going to be basting, top stitching, and pick stitching this as well. And I want to just make sure, because there's a few different layers here, right? So I'm just going to press this in like this. Just so it stays real nice and it's not fighting us, you know? Okay. All right. Excellent. Beautiful. Oh, yeah, that's what we're looking for, okay? Now I'm going to switch this around because I want to work with the raw edge away from me. It's much easier for me to work with the raw edge away from me than towards me in doing all this. So we'll just let that drape down there like so. Okay. Let's get this so you can see what's happening as well. There and there. Make sure we're all centered. All right. get my shirt so it's not choking me. Okay. All right, so here's the yoke. And you know, it probably would do us, I'm just gonna press this off on the back. I folded it in half when I mark stitched it, and I don't want a big crease in the back of my yoke. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna line this up so that the middle, so I have this beautiful stripe here. Yeah, you see? This stripe has 5 stripes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the middle stripe, okay, with the middle of my pleat, where the two edges of the pleat come together, okay? And I planned it like that. Pretty amazing. Let me pull this up. There we go. All right, then what I want to do is I want to make sure, okay, that my sleeve here is coming together as it should. Not my sleeve, excuse me, my arm side, okay? So I have these mark stitches here. I'm not sure if you can see them, but I need to match, and this is actually my right side. What side is this? Yes, this is my right side, of course. So I need to match these mark stitches up here nicely, okay? They have to match. So I'll do that. Okay, there. And you know what? We'll just put a couple more pins in here, maybe 1 or 2, just to hold this down real nice for us, okay? Here, and we'll put one here. So now I'm not really trying to match anything, okay? Because this was cut differently, so it's not going to match. I might match one stripe, okay, but I'm not going to match all of them, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just trying to get this to lay nice here. Same thing over here, where I'm going to match my arm side now that this is together. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a pin and I'll match the arm side together. Where are you? There you are. There, like so. And then we'll put another pin or 2, okay? And of course I'm matching my raw edge up here as well, right? Now if you remember, we gave ourselves a 1 centimeter, sure that's right, 1 centimeter seam, which I can use this dark stripe here as a guide because that's 1 centimeter, okay? So we have everything put together nicely here. And so now we just need to do the same thing we did before. All right, we just need to base, top stitch, and pick stitch all this together. And our back will be done and ready. Ready for lining. Beautiful, beautiful red lining. We're going to do the same thing with the lining, exactly the same thing. Except, of course, we'll use the machine. We're not going to pick stitch the lining. That doesn't really make sense, okay? So here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, just like I did with my back, and I'm going to baste all this together real nice. I'm going to use a relatively, you know, small stitch, maybe a 1.5, 2 centimeters long, about a 1/2 centimeter in between. Nice straight line across the top of this stripe, which is 1 centimeter. That works out real nice. You know? That works out real nice. Okay, so that's easy enough. We'll get that knocked out. And I think this is going to have a really nice effect, you know. I like the idea of this pleat in the back. I like the idea of, you know, having, well, you can't see it because the mannequin's over there, but having the yoke in the front. And when the back and the front come together at the shoulder seam, it's going to look really, really sharp. It's going to be different and just have a nice style feature that you don't see very often when it comes to traditional bespoke tailoring. So, you know, I like to take fashion, I guess, mix fashion and tailoring together. I don't know. I like things that are, you know, timeless. You know, these pieces here are timeless, right? But I also like things that are fun and creative, and you can take, you know, the talent that you have and apply it to making anything that you want. That's the thing that's really cool about tailoring is if you know how to pattern, you know, if you know how to measure somebody and fit them, pattern, all that, all you need to know is how to make 3 different types of patterns: the jacket, a waistcoat, and trousers. If you know how to make those 3 patterns, you can make anything you want, you know. Trousers are a little harder to pattern than skirts. Skirts are easy too. Skirts are super easy. But, you know, if you know how to make a skirt pattern and a waistcoat pattern, then you can make a dress. You can make any kind of dress you want, you know. If you know how to make a coat, like a jacket like this, you can make a coat. You can make anything. Make a beautiful jumpsuit out of trousers and a vest, if you will, or a waistcoat. Okay? And so, you know, it just, so I love taking and making fashionable things, finding new ways to make trousers, make them a little different, you know, bring a little fashion into it. Flair, a little flair is always nice. And that's what this little swing coat is all about, having a bit of a fashionable, bespoke tailoring project, if you will. Okay? So that's something to think about if you're looking to learn to tailor more. And we'll be doing more projects. Oh boy, yes we will. I got lots of projects I want to do. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing as I did before. I'm just getting some of this tightness out. Okay, getting rid of my needles, pins, if you will. Okay, and now we can open this up and get the pins out of here too. That should be held down well now. We can get that out and open this up so you can see what it looks like now that we've got this put together nicely. Yeah? Now I think what I'm going to do, let's see, what do we want to do here? Do we want the yoke to overlap? I don't think so. I think I want the yoke to overlap the bottom. Yes, I do. All right. So we're going to hold this way. You see? Oh, that looks lovely. All right, let's spread this out so you can see it a bit. All right, so that looks lovely. I've got a little bit of ease right there. I think I'll have to smooth that out slightly. I think we'll be okay. All right, so that's what that's going to look like. I'm going to top stitch this now, okay? And again, I've got the fold away from me. I want the yoke to overlap the bottom of the jacket, you see? So that's going to look really, really cool. We almost matched a couple of stripes here, but this was cut, remember, this was cut on the weft, warp, weft? I don't know. The opposite of however I laid everything. So we won't be able to match it because the stripe is running different, okay? So here again, I'm just going to baste this down using smaller stitches. And I am going to keep this laying flat because it is a little much to try and pick up in the hand all this cloth, yeah? So I'm just opening up my seam here. You see that? Like so. Nicely, keeping my stitches relatively small and close together. All right? There we go. Just like that. Perfect. Very nice. Yep, small and close together. And close to the edge too. Like I said, about a millimeter, maybe 2 millimeters off the edge. Okay? So once we have this basted down, we're going to give it a nice press again, if you can believe it. Okay? Again, I don't want this to be tight. And then we're going to pick stitch it. All right, very good. Okay, so of course we press. I'm going to press it on the wrong side first. A little bit of water. Okay. All right, we may have to, my top of my inlay is kind of fallen out of the stitch a little bit here, so we may have to go in and make a slight correction there. We'll see in a second if we can get him to behave himself. We don't want this inlay drooping down, you see. If we have that happening, it's going to be a real problem because it'll pull, and we don't want anything pulling. We want this laying really nice and straight, okay? So I have to go in there and pull a stitch, I think. And I might have to put a little needle in him, or a pin rather, just to hold him nicely so he behaves himself. That happens. There's a lot of layers here. It's just one little stitch. Not sure if it's my baste or my top stitch, or both. Could be just the top stitch. All right. Ah, okay. So we don't even have to take a stitch. It was just caught in a little bit of the zha-zha. So what I'm going to do, just to be cautious here, is I'm going to put a pin in like this, just to hold it up, okay? Just to hold it up nice. I'll put a pin in like that, okay? All right. Now we can come in and take out our first baste. And here, give me 1 second. I found my seam ripper. Oh, God help me. Yeah, it was sitting on the other part of the table. Okay, so here I'm just going to come in from underneath and take out my first baste. It's just easier than trying to turn things all over underneath, or so I say. So I say. There we go. Where is it? I'm having a hard time seeing my stitches here with all this white and black. My eyes are starting to go bonkers on me. Okay. All right, very good. Okay, so we got the first based out, and now I'm going to pick stitch all of this, okay, straight across, just like before. Get some of those zhazhas out. Fortunately, I have a nice piece of thread already put together for myself, and I can start all the way over here and just knock this out. Okay? That's what I'm going to do. Is just pick stitch all of this right across. Unfortunately, it's not as arduous as the back center seam was, right? Boy, I'm having a hell of a day today, aren't I? Can't find the pick stitch. Glasses keep sliding. I keep getting stuff impeding in my stitch here. It's a hell of a day in the atelier, people, I'll tell you. Sometimes you have days like that, right? It's not so bad. This actually came together quite nicely. I'm very happy with it. I think it looks pretty badass. And what we need to do before we put the lining in, which we'll do in our next lesson, is we want to press this out real nice so that I'm not going to press this pleat all the way down. I'm going to press it down to a point and then let it just open up on its own. But I do want to give it a nice press and do that. So that'll be, and then of course, obviously we'll press the rest of the cloth real nice before we put our lining in, because that'll be important. So really important. So here's the deal. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish pick stitching all this, and I'll show you what it looks like when I finish up. And then I'll show you what it looks like when I finish up, and we'll give it another final press, and that'll be that. I'm pretty much pick stitched out for the day, if you want to know the truth. I've had enough pick stitches. Yeah? We've had enough pick stitches. All right. So we'll just tack that off nice. There we go. Lovely. And as we do, let's spread this out nice here. There we go. We'll take out our basting stitch here. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of an easier time now that we've got our little seam ripper or pick stitch or whatever you want to, seam ripper. Yeah. Get that out of there. Done and done. And we'll give this a nice press. And we'll be all done. We did some good work today. Oh my God, really? Okay, beautiful. All right, let's turn it over first and press it on the wrong side. Make sure everything looks up to snuff back here, and it does. Okay. Get a little water. So we can press it out real nice. All right, same here. Just give this a little tug as we did before. Very good. So yeah, that's it. We're going to finish. We're going to press off the front a little bit. We're going to be done. And we'll have the whole, this is the whole back basically put together, right? We still have a little bit more work to do in terms of turning up the hem. We have some housekeeping work like we did on the front. Get the arm side all chain stitched and put in some nice hem supports in a couple areas, okay? So here what I'm going to do is just give this part a nice little press here, okay? So this all hangs nice, like so. Oh yeah, I'll just do it just right there, just like that. Press this out real nice. I'm loving this. I'm loving this pleat. I think it's going to be really sharp. Just dry that off a little bit more. All right, so there you have it. Just a day full of pick stitching, but hopefully, you know, this is what you do to put a garment together. You pick stitch it. That's how it works. Well, that's not dry. Let's dry that off a little bit more. That's not dry. I'll dry that. But that's what you do to get a garment, a bespoke garment, a handmade, true handmade garment is completely hand stitched, even the seams. So yes, is it a bit arduous? Of course. Is it worth it in the end? Well, I don't know. You tell me. Thank you for joining me in the atelier today. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please do like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And before we get to putting in that beautiful scarlet red lining into the back of our swing coat, we have to add some hem supports and chain stitch our arm side. So that's what's happening next time in the atelier. I hope you'll join me then.